Now here's the run-up. Swing of the right leg, and we're underway.
Here we go.
You know what time the game starts? All right, here we go, fellas. Let's have a little fun today. Is anybody else tired, or is it just me? I got some advice for y'all. Take 2 weeks off, then quit.
From the goal line to 5 and 10 to 15. Through a hole to the 20, to the 30, outside to the 40. He may be gone. Midfield to the 40, the 30, the 25, 20, the 10, 5. Touchdown for Desmond Howard.
What is up, Packers fans? Welcome to our episode of PWW Live. I got Ryan Schoberg. I got Matt Freilich with us, the PWW team here. Guys, it's September. It's the same month that football is actually going to be played. Can you actually believe that we're here right now?
Snuck up on us, to be
Right?
honest with you. It really just came out of nowhere. I didn't realize it was Labor Day until yesterday. Last night, my boss was like, by the way, you have Monday off. Paid day. I'm like, for what? Like, did I miss something? And I'm like, oh, it's Labor Day. We're ready, man.
Well, summer was canceled, so we didn't get to experience a whole lot. So Labor Day is going to sneak up on you like that.
Well, and I mean, I think we've seen it over social media. Like, the world needs football right now. I mean, that's all I'm going to say about it. We could take that in a number of different directions, but man, oh man, does the world need football, and it's here. So I couldn't be more excited. I'm super excited to have you guys here to chat some Packers. We're going to do some fun stuff here. Before we get into that, Matt, I don't think I've ever seen you wear that shirt. Can you please share with us what you've got there?
Yep. No matter how bad my life sucks, at least I'm not a Bears fan.
True.
Perfect.
I said a new shirt. It's not a new shirt. I've had this shirt for a while, but it was kind of a shirt I wanted to throw on here just to deal with some allergy stuff. And it's like, my allergies aren't that bad. I could be a Bears fan. So this shirt is back, I want to say like 2010. We were picking up in college a few kegs for, I believe, a Packer game, New Year's Eve, Rose Bowl extravaganza, and I saw it at the liquor store. I'm like, that's the best $10 I'll spend throughout this year and the following year, and scooped it up, and it's a solid shirt to have.
Beautiful. I love it. Ryan, I see, I believe, are you rocking the white Jair Alexander? Is that what we've got here?
White Jair is kind of the go-to for these live casts. And then a little week one shot at the Vikings. You know, they've never experienced one of these, so
they don't have one of those hats.
Thought we would
fear of commitment.
Put that right there.
So I wonder, that's a good question, Schoberg, because I think when the two teams that go into the Super Bowl, don't they make both the hats
Yes.
for just in case? So like those 4 times in the 70s when the Vikings did make the Super Bowl, like, are there any of those fake Super Bowl championship Viking hats out there? And if there are, do any Vikings fans wear them as like some sort of weird fantasy? Get at us at Packers Worldwide if you're a Vikings fan and you have a weird.
You can find those jerseys. I just don't know if we have any listeners in those countries, or excuse me, those hats. I just don't know. Like, they ship them off. It's
right.
There's better people that could have them.
There's a couple of boxes must have fell off the truck or something.
I'm pretty sure they send the team that loses gear to Africa, if I'm not mistaken, and they give them out for free to kids that need shirts, kids that need hats. So cool. If you're really into that, Minnesota fans, you could take a quick flight to Kenya, Sudan, somewhere of the sorts, and maybe find one from the 70s.
But hey, at least like the Vikings failures are going towards a good cause. I mean, that's the way that I'm looking at that. I mean, absolutely. Hey, we have contributed to that cause, I guess, against the Broncos that one year. But let's not talk about that. That's a horrible memory. We're in a good space right now. Before we get into anything too crazy, make sure you guys are liking us. Make sure you guys are subscribing. Like the video. I've got the socials for the whole Packers Worldwide team, just kind of tracking on the bottom there. So if you aren't following us yet, make sure that you are now. Let's get into it, guys. I mean, week 1 is not that far away. and the Packers are going to be taking on the Vikings on the road in a stadium with no fans. But yeah, I mean, there's still a pretty good football team going to be lining across from them. So, maybe like there's some really good battles. So I'm wondering which one positional battles versus the Vikings are you guys most looking forward to? Ryan, maybe I'll throw it to you first. What are you kind of thinking of?
So a lot of people look at the cornerback situation in Minnesota. A lot of potential there, but a lot of young guys. So you might be looking at them going against the Packers receivers, but I'm going to put a little spin on this. I'm going to go young Viking cornerbacks being thrown into the fire, no preseason games, limited practice against the man himself, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, right? So we have starters Holton Hill. He's a third-year guy, undrafted free agent. The only reason he was an undrafted free agent is off-the-field issues. He would have been drafted if not for those issues. But he's played decent. He hasn't played great. He hasn't played bad. He's been a decent corner thus far in his career. And then you have rookie first-rounder Jeff Gladney. He was a guy from TCU that they really liked, snagged him in the first round. And then you have cornerback Cameron Dantzler, who I believe was a third-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. But I will tell you, Cameron Dantzler has been making play after play after play in training camp. But he's also going against Kirk Cousins, right? Kirk Cousins is not Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers could have a field day, and I'm looking forward to it if the Packers' offensive line can hold up against this pass rush, because if they can, these cornerbacks might get lost. Mike Zimmer's system is one of the toughest to pick up as a secondary player. And like I said, these guys have had no warm-up to this game. They're being thrown right into the fire, and I can't wait to watch it.
It's going to be a trial by fire, right? I mean, it's like Xavier Rhodes and Mackenzie Alexander and Trey Waynes. Like, I'm not going to say that was the best group of corners in the NFL, but it was a veteran group of corners that had experience and game time under their belt. In this offseason, I would say even both on the wide receiver side, the Vikings are kind of in a similar position too. I mean, the one that really sticks out to me and has been a lot of topic of conversation on social media this week is the Packers defensive line versus the Vikings Swiss cheese offensive line. And doesn't look like it's going to get better anytime soon as the Vikings go to Riley Reif asking him to take a pay cut. If not, then, they might be looking at cutting him. That would put Ezra Cleveland as your starting left tackle, which, I mean, I liked Ezra Cleveland coming out of the draft. I think he's a solid prospect. But again, it goes back to that same point that you made, Ryan, was like, these are young players that have had no preseason warm up. And, by mid-season, a lot of those young players will probably be playing pretty well. But week one against a largely returning veteran team, like, they're up against it. And, if you're adding to the dynamic of one of the most suspect offensive lines from a pass protection perspective last year, and you're taking out a veteran left tackle and putting in a rookie, I mean, it just accentuates what we're used to seeing. I mean, that week 17 matchup, or was it week 16 against the Vikings? It feels like 10 years ago now, but I don't know that I've seen a more dominant performance besides like a Reggie White defensive game than that Zadarius Smith game against the Vikings. It was ridiculous. And it wasn't just him. Like, Kenny Clark was getting there, Preston Smith was getting there. And it doesn't appear that, the situation is better for the Vikings. So I look for the Packers to really get after Kirk Cousins, really make things very uncomfortable for him. Matt, what are you thinking? What are some of the things that you're looking most forward to seeing there?
So the first one that jumps out to me is just the reverse of your take, Ryan. It's the Vikings defensive line versus the Packers offensive line. And I think the Packers offensive line is solid. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that we're still in September, like you mentioned, Ryan, to start the show, and we're still not sure what the right tackle spot is solidified for the Packers is a little concerning to me. I still think Rick Wagner gets it, but Billy Turner's been getting some snaps on the outside too. So that's like, if they really believe in him to kick him out, what happens in that right guard spot, we'll see. But adding Yannick Ngakoue, and they still have Daniel Hunter, who's been missing some practices, it sounds like. Mike Zimmer won't say what the issue is, but when healthy, he's a dominant, absolute physical specimen. I mean, the guy's just a freak. So I am concerned about those two edge guys being able to get after the Packers, and we've seen what the Packers have dealt with in the past with the Vikings pass rush. And I just think it's another – we saw last year too. I mean, I know they're completely different situations, from having time to install an offense to playing week 1 for the Bears to now it's year 2 of Matt LaFleur's offense to not having any prep time. I see somewhat of a comparison, but I'm a little concerned the Packers will come out slightly stagnant, just like they did week 1 of 2019. I hope that's not the case, of course, but I just do think the edge rushers and the newly acquired Jacksonville disgruntled Jaguar defensive end joining the Vikings, which only makes their salary cap conundrum even more wild.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. We'll have to get our friend of the show, Ken Ingalls, on to talk at some point, but it's good for them to do that. I mean, there was something that was brought up today on the Pat McAfee show. I don't want to get us too far down the road, but you look at Jadeveon Clowney was out there, right? They could have signed him. Not only do they not sign him, and they were going to have to pay maybe $4, $5, $6 million more what they're going to pay Yannick, but they go a little bit cheaper on the financial aspect, but they give up draft equity. So it kind of shows you, and I would say personally, side by side, I know Jadeveon's a little older, less injury or more injury prone, but you would think giving up, less than $4 or $5 million would not be as great of an idea if you're also giving up 2, top eventually possibly top 100 picks. So it's just, we'll see what happens with that edge, but a little concerned, to be honest, about the right tackle spot. That's what I just thought Rick Wagner was the guy all along, and it just does not seem to be the case.
The good thing with that is the Vikings don't have a guy up the middle like Kenny Clark. Michael Pierce opted out, so if you need help on that outside with Daniil Hunter, with Yannick Ngakoue, then you can give it to him all day, because that middle rush isn't going to provide a whole lot this year for them.
Well, and you said it, Matt, that right tackle battle is going to be a really interesting spot to watch. I mean, I think you were right. Like, Rick Wagner was kind of the guy, but, as we've seen in the past, injuries kind of sort out these battles sometimes in training camp. And by all accounts, Billy Turner has looked good at right tackle, and Lane Taylor has come out swinging, fighting for his job out there. And it looks like he's going to be a lock to make this roster unless something crazy happens. I think when we talk about our offensive tackles, the left side is going to be pretty much locked down. I can't remember where I heard it, but somebody was saying that Daniil Hunter pretty much rushes exclusively from the right side, and Ngakoue pretty much rushes exclusively from the left. So you can kind of expect that's how they're going to use them there. So I think, we can set it and forget it with David Bakhtiari, but that right side of the line is going to be, probably under some pressure. But I like what Ryan said. I would rather have, a Jadeveon Clowney and my 2nd round pick and potentially another 3rd round pick than Yannick Ngakoue. That's just kind of where I stand. But hey, as long as Rick Spielman and the Vikings want to continue to give up draft assets and spend tons of money to keep the Kirk Cousins window open, like, I'm all about it. Like, just keep doing it. We love it. We will actually, I want to put it out here. I think I saw this on Twitter too, where isn't the Pro Bowl vote tied to something about that conditional draft pick? So if Ngakoue makes the Pro Bowl, then isn't
the trade straight up is a 2nd and a 5th. If Ngakoue makes the Pro Bowl, it's a 4th. If the Vikings win the Super Bowl, it's a 3rd. That won't happen. We know it's probably going to be a 4th or a 5th. And a side point here, I listen to a lot of Minnesota media. Paul Allen, voice of the Vikings today, had on the voice of the Jaguars, and he used a phrase twice in that interview that shocked me. When talking about Yannick Ngakoue, he said he was a situational pass rusher 2 times. So that's not telling you every down. If he's situational, he's coming in on 2nd and 3rd down, and he's not playing the run. So if you can mix it up a little bit and throw the ball on 1st down once in a while and make sure Yannick is not on the field, that's going to benefit the Packers even more.
Nice. And well, especially with the amount of the 5 eligibles coming out heavy, looking like you're running the ball, the illusion of complexity that Matt LaFleur and that whole system really tries to take advantage of defenses when they have obvious sub packages, obvious players used for different types of situations throughout the game. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they use them. Whether Danielle Hunter's healthy or not, and that forces Ngakoue in or to switch sides to a place he's not comfortable with. It'll all be settled in a couple of days here, guys. So with that, we've got an entire roster of Packers players that like may or may not be on this team in a little bit. And I think it'll be interesting to see who actually makes that cut. And, if you go onto Twitter, you go onto social media, everybody and their mother has got a 53-man roster prediction. At Packers Worldwide, we kind of took a little bit of a different spin on it. Matt wrote a super cool article in the offseason that showed all of the active Packers players and their social media accounts, where you could find them. So we loved that article so much. There was so much traffic generated from it that we created a space on our page just specifically for that. So I'm going to throw that up on there. If you want to see and follow along with the Packers depth chart, who's actually going to make the cut, make sure you check out that article. Make sure you check out the page that we've put as more of a permanent spin on the site, something for you guys to follow along all year round. Hey, we've got a chat from Andy Gilbert on here. He didn't even know we were on Facebook. So he's
Still
pretty
get
excited.
out there in the book.
Yeah. Hey, listen, we're everywhere where you guys want to check out your Packers stuff. YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. Facebook, make sure you're following us there. Make sure you're following us on Twitter to catch all our updates. We are wherever you are. So happy to be here, guys. Well, let's get right into it. Let's, we've got a 53-man roster to predict here. So I don't know how prepared you guys are for this or not. But let's right through it. Let's go position by position, talk about who we think is going to make the cut. Let's start with the low-hanging fruit quarterback. I think it's pretty safe to say Aaron Rodgers is going to make that roster. We'll call that a lock. Jordan Love, that's a lock. They just traded up in the first round. And where it gets interesting is that third QB spot. So, I mean, everything I'm hearing, especially with the shortened offseason, we heard about it in terms of our opponent, the Vikings, how it's going to be very difficult for a rookie to be the primary backup to Aaron Rodgers, a guy that has had some injuries in the past. And Tim Boyle is having a lights out camp. So I don't see any way he doesn't make this roster. Do you guys agree?
100%. I think just from the standpoint and the strategy that you heard a lot of coaches talking about when they came back to actually being able to have guys practice is kind of having that backup, that emergency quarterback I don't want to say at this point, it doesn't seem like they're going to really do it as much, but like the quarantine quarterback where he's off on his own, maybe he's not in so much contact, which I don't think a lot of teams are doing that. It seems like everyone's practicing together. I don't know how you really control that, but to me, it would seem like if you had to have a guy, it just doesn't. There's no possible way, in my opinion, that they don't have all three active, because you're not going to put one of them on the practice squad. Tim Boyle, clearly, as you mentioned, Bowman, like he's been getting some good publicity around Green Bay and Wisconsin and Packers Twitter. I don't know if it's always weird to look at. Like, does the average NFL fan or even the passionate NFC North fan know who the hell Tim Boyle is, or that he's having a good training camp? Probably not. If they did, props to them. But like, I don't think you want to throw a guy like that in the practice squad. I think it just makes sense to have that veteran, just in case Rodgers would go down, because after Jordan Love's performance in August and September, it hasn't been the most advantageous to think that Aaron Rodgers would have been traded, like some people predicted back in May.
Hey, Andy, with another great question. Do you think Love will overtake Boyle as the number 2 this year? For me, I'm going to say no. Again, most of the reps that Love was going to get this year is in training camp and preseason. And without the preseason and just, again, unless something happens to Tim Boyle, I'm going to say no.
I'm also going to say no there. The only way that I see Jordan Love overtaking Tim Boyle as the number 2 is if we have a Matt Hasselbeck situation and Green Bay gets an offer that just blows them away after camp is over, and they can't say no to the trade offer. If that comes in the form of a 2, 3, or 4, I can definitely see them pulling the trigger. Anything lower than that, I see them holding on to Tim Boyle because right now he's just way too valuable on this roster to not have on it.
I agree.
Pulling for the depths there, Schober. That's solid. Matt Hasselbeck reference. Good stuff.
We'll take the ball and we're gonna score.
Woo-wee, that's got to be one of my favorite highlights of all time. Like there is no like football gods have smited you situation more than that one, right? Like really. I mean, he technically did take the ball and there was a score though. So was he wrong? Was he wrong? I don't know.
Touche.
All right, guys, let's move on to the running backs here. The now premium position in the Packers offense. That feels weird to say, but I mean, running backs are the what stirs the drink around here now, right? So I've personally got 4 running backs making the squad. I know earlier on I had said 5, including the fullback, Matt, but like I just with the, how we've seen them use Josiah DeGuara in that kind of fullback role throughout the offseason. I think it's going to be hard pressed to find a roster spot on this 53 for a true fullback. So I'm going to go with the 4, and I think they're pretty obvious. Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, AJ Dillon, and this is where maybe it gets interesting. Is Tyler Ervin a running back anymore? Early reports at camp say that he is practicing exclusively with the wide receivers. I know they really shut things down before that, but I was on a live chat with the Game On Wisconsin boys, and Andy Herman was there. And before all the restrictions had gone down, the indications were that, Ervin was pretty much working out with the wide receivers all the time. So I'm going to say that 4th running back is Dexter Williams, and he is going to make the squad. I know nobody likes Dexter Williams, but he's a talented guy, and I think he's had a pretty good camp from what I've heard. So I see you guys shaking your heads like I'm crazy.
He's talented, man, but I don't think he applies himself the best. Like that's the problem I see. And like he's a solid talent. Don't get me wrong. Like I think he could be a really good running back for the Packers or even someone else in the league. I just don't see them having a lot of faith in him. And if we're going with Tyler Ervin as a receiver, which is disagrees with what I thought a few months ago how they're going to slot him, it doesn't really matter at this point what position you give him. You could change his jersey number to something in the 80s, and I would still call him a running back or a receiver or a weapon, as they're calling him too. But going off the premise that Tyler Ervin's a receiver, I have 3 then. Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, AJ Dillon. I'll say Dexter Williams is probably on the practice squad. He's probably one of those top 5 out of the 10 guys. That's what I had him slotted at. So, and I have to go a little bit off brand. I don't think there will be a fullback, to Ryan's point, with what they're going to use with Josiah DeGuara, and it doesn't make sense at this point to leave a Jordan Lovett on the team. I love the versatility of what he can do. Not only that he is a fullback, but he can catch the ball, he can run the ball, he can pass the ball. Princeton guy, so he's smart. He's got a big brain. Like you'd want a guy like that on your football team, but I don't think he's going to make the team. I'll put him down as a practice squad guy as well.
I'll go with Matt here. I'm going Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, AJ Dillon, and where it really does not help Dexter Williams at all is, yes, Tyler Ervin is practicing exclusively with the wide receivers, but if you get 2 guys that go down in one game, you can always move him right back to running back, and he'll hit the ground running and have no problem with that transition. So I think that really hurts Dexter Williams' chance at the roster. I agree with Matt again that I do believe Dexter Williams will be on the practice squad. I don't think he gets claimed by a different team just because he has shown nothing. But yeah, coming out of college, I like Dexter. He has a burst that you like, but wow, I'm agreeing with Matt on everything. Dexter Williams came into camp not really in shape last year. His body wasn't in the best shape, form, whatever you want to say. Yeah, hey, this is the NFL. This ain't no pee-wee football game, all right? So if there's anyone we're not going to body shame, though, it's AJ Dillon, because his legs are literal fire hydrants.
I want to clarify that.
They're a redwood out of California. They're unbelievable. You call Saquon Barkley Saquad. What are we going to call AJ Dillon?
I don't know.
He's got his own Twitter account at this point, so AJ
Dillon's legs. That did not take long for AJ Dillon's legs to get their own Twitter account. And I don't even know how many followers they have, probably more than I do at this point. So, great job on the creativity, guys. Appreciate it. By the way, follow me, guys. Like everybody follows Packers Worldwide. You guys are doing great there, but like I'm doing pretty weak sauce. Like if I get to 1,000 followers, I will give away something really cool. I don't know what it is yet. Maybe it's a jersey. Maybe it's some Packers Worldwide swag. We'll figure something out. But like, get me some followers, guys. We got to get.
If Ryan gets to 1,000 followers, he will eat a Vikings hat.
Oh God!
I mean, like the whole thing, or like a few bites. Can I dip it in some ranch, or like
to be determined?
Oh God!
I mean, you're from Canada, so don't you want to dip it in syrup or something?
No. I think
some black blue.
We got to get some like tzatziki sauce or what. I don't know what I don't know what a generic Canadian sauce would be like. Well, get back to me on that one. But hey, if you guys have some ideas on what I should do if I get to 1,000 followers, like I will entertain cool, non-painful ideas from our followers here if they want to get at me here. So, okay, so it sounds like you guys have mutinied already. We're like 2 positions in, and you're already going against the grain on me here. So I'm going to get overridden here, and we'll go with 3 running backs, and we'll keep Dexter Williams as a practice squad candidate at that point. So moving on to the wide receivers. What do you got, Show?
Where it gets interesting, right? Yeah. So
it does.
There's a lot of bodies that are average players, I guess you could say, down in the 5, 6, 7 range. I'm going to go Devontae. Obviously, he is making the squad. That is news to nobody. We're going Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Kind of fell off at the end of last year, but by all indications, he's having an absolute fire camp. He's been working out with Randy Moss. You got to love that, just as long as he doesn't moon the home crowd. After that, Alan Lazard obviously came on last year hard, but after that, it's really murky. It's really murky. So after the 3, I'm going to go 4. Equinemius St. Brown. He makes the squad for me. He's going to take that next step this year. If Devin Funchess didn't opt out, obviously he'd be on the squad, but we take him out of it. Man, do we like Touchdown Jesus again?
He almost just has to be on the squad. Like
I'm going 5 Tyler Ervin. He is definitely, in my book, a weapon. He's not a receiver nor a running back. You put him anywhere on the field, Matt LaFleur find ways to put him. But you know what? Just for the sake of argument and for the sake of making this interesting, Touchdown Jesus is gone on my book. Reggie Begelton in.
Ooh, interesting. That will make some people upset. Our fellow team member Kieran Sprecher won't be one of them. He is a Reggie Begelton truther, and I think he'd be very happy to hear that. This is a tough one, and I had come in thinking if they keep 4 running backs, it's 5 wide receivers. If they keep 3, it's 6. And, you can call Tyler Ervin whatever he wants. He's probably a wide receiver, but if he's your 4th running back, then it makes it 5 wide receivers. So 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. I agree, obviously. The only 2 actual locks for me at this point are Devontae Adams and Lazard, probably MVS now after the camp that we've been hearing that he's had. So those 3 guys I think are probably locked in. I think EQ and Irvin are for sure making the squad. So we'll throw those guys in as 4 and 5. I'm going to say Kumaro still makes it, though, with the positional flexibility and Irvin being somewhat of a running back, so you can throw him into that category, plus the special teams. Like, if it was just him being a special teamer, he's worth a roster spot for what he does for the Packers. So the fact that he can play running back, the fact that he can play wide receiver, I don't think impacts the overall number that people think you need to assign to it. And I know that Jay Kumaro is a fan or he has a lot of fans in that locker room. Aaron Rodgers is a big proponent of him. Matt LaFleur has talked about his blocking efforts so often, and he got an interview. Guys. Like, he got a press availability, and that's usually a pretty good sign that they're not going to cut you. But I'm going to say Kumaro makes it. What about you, Matt?
You would think that. See, I was going with the narrative of like the presser makes you're in there, but they're starting to open up. It's a little fine. It's not as fine of a line as it was a few weeks ago. So
well, when they did it though, you know what I mean? Like at that time, like
right.
now they're starting to give like some
it's
late round guys, some undrafted guys, some
exactly.
presser, you know. But like when they gave Kumaro his availability, I feel like he was still in that like echelon of other guys that were available that were probably making the squad too. Just my thought. But go on. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I would say, to be honest with you, I mean, you guys talked about it being maybe, or at least Schoberg did, about maybe towards that 4, 5, 6 spot, it being a little weak. Personally, I think there's 4 guys that are for sure locks, and that's Devontae, Alan Lazard, MVS with the camp he's had, and then the Equimania St. Brown just with his lack of the 2019 season, what they really believe in him. So it's like it's paired that you know what you have in MVS. He was banged up, and he's having a good preseason, or excuse me, a training camp. And then say Equimania, I think they just are in love with this kid, and they can't wait to get him on the field and see him. So it's like those 4 are locks. And then my 5th is Jake Kumaro. 6th would be your boy Tyler Irvin, and then Reggie Begelton. I think he does get a shot. I don't see the other guys making it. Darius Shepard, he's not there. I mean, Malik Taylor, he's okay. Malik Turner, they've both had decent camps. Darryl Stewart Jr., I haven't heard a word about him. I don't know if he's still on the team right now.
He got cut.
There you go. So he's not even there either. So it's like I just think 7 receivers does seem quite a bit, but it doesn't take much. I think we've alluded to this before in previous podcasts, or I've heard other people say this on stream. It doesn't take much to cut down that roster, and all of a sudden you're lining up Trevor Davis, you're lining up Jeff Janis, and you're wishing you would have kept a few other guys around. So I think going down to 6 it concerns me to go 6. That's why 7 seems safe, especially even if that 7th is Tyler Irvin.
It's an interesting stat. Like 7, I didn't think anybody was going to come in here and say 7 wide receivers today. And I can only think of one time in recent memory that the Packers have actually done that, and that was the year that they kept Donald Driver, and they probably shouldn't have. So I don't know, like 7 wide receivers in this offense. I don't know, Matt.
If I had to cut one, it would be probably.
It's either Begelton or Kumaro.
I'm kind of biased with Begelton too, because I just want to see him out on the field once. That's the problem. Where it's like Kumaro's easy to get rid of, but like you alluded to, he's a great special teamer. He blocks really hard. He runs really well after the catch. Like I feel he's like one of those gritty guys you almost just have to have on your team. Like I don't know who else you get rid of at that point. And I mean, to be honest, they probably don't keep 7. You're right, but I just don't see how you cut either one of those guys. And if he had to cut one, it'd probably be Begelton, because I'm being biased. But I just want to see that guy in the field.
Same.
I really want to see him at least get a few targets.
So for the sake of numbers, I do think that we have to cut it to 6, and we have to come up with an executive decision here of who's getting the snip.
Let's come back to that. Let's say it's 6. And if we're over or under, then we can come back and say, well, let's give Reggie Begelton a shot, or, you know, maybe there's another fringe guy that maybe deserves argument against him. So let's say that it's 6 for now, and it's undetermined whether it's Begelton or Kumaro as that number 6. We'll come back to it. So after the wide receivers, let's do the tight ends. I've got 4 here. I've got Mercedes Lewis, I've got Jay Sternberger, Josiah DeGuara, and maybe the number 1 tight end of the Packers, Big Bob Tonyan. I don't know. Like, I mean, I hear he's been running with the ones a little bit, even though the ones aren't a thing. But that, by all accounts, like he's going to be active in this offense. Whether or not he's a true number 1, I don't think that really matters. But opening day 1, maybe he's seeing more snaps than Jay Sternberger. What do you guys think? 4? 3, 5? What do you got?
I haven't had
Matt,
4,
lead this one off, Matt.
Yeah. I have it at 4. It's Sternberger. I'm curious to see what he does. I know we had a couple of questions before the before the PWW live this morning, just what his stock will be. I think back in the spring there was a ton of buzz about Jay Sternberger, and from the sounds of it, he's struggled a little bit in training camp. Don't know, what that's. In what capacity? I haven't really seen any video that way. I think Mercedes Lewis is a lock. Josiah DeGuara clearly is going to be that Swiss Army knife that Matt LaFleur can't stop talking about and loves highlights from his Cincinnati days. And Tanya to me is just, he's similar to, like, who was I looking at? Like MVS, where are you going to fit in, right? Like I know you're more than likely going to make the roster. What's your stuff? Like besides a long touchdown pass, an incredible throw by Aaron Rodgers for a touchdown to Robert Tonyan, like that's really all I've remembered. The 60-yard, whatever it was, like that's all really I remember from Big Bob. And I believe he's worked out a little bit more this offseason. He's been working out with George Kittle a little bit more. He looks a little bit more toned up and more agile. And I think there was conversation, I want to say it was either Aaron Nagler or Dusty Evely were talking about just the body type that Robert Tonyan was kind of transitioning from, whether he's going to have to be a thicker tight end or a receiving tight end. He was going back and forth on that. I don't know where he still is, to be honest with you, because like he could be considered a blocking tight end in this offense. But for all intents and purposes, I have 4, and I don't really see. I mean, I can't see it being any less than that, just with the offense I believe they're going to run this year.
Yeah, I think this group will pretty much be unanimous. Agreed here. I as well have Mercedes Lewis, Jay Sternberger, Big Bob Tonyan, and Josiah DeGuara, who is that Swiss Army knife in the offense that you alluded to, going to be able to play a little H-back, tight end, and fullback, move all over the field. And I do think Josiah DeGuara makes the biggest impact out of all the rookies on the roster this year, because Matt LaFleur was showing film on Josiah DeGuara last season when he wasn't even on the roster to the team this year. And then, lo and behold, they draft him. Nobody knew who he was. Everyone thought he was going in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. They take him in the 3rd. And right after that pick, Matt LaFleur was talking about how much he was just in love with him. Now, we get back to the 1s and the 2s. Mercedes Lewis is obviously his bread and butter is blocking. He is an extra offensive tackle on the field. If there ever was one without playing the position, he's going to be out there on running downs. After that, it gets a little interesting. I do think Bob Tonyan is the number 1 tight end going into the season. Whether he is that number 1 weeks 10 to 17 remains to be seen. But Jay Sternberger has been incredibly quiet this training camp. There's been nothing about him. There's been you follow these guys that are at practice every day, Andy Herman, Rob Domofsky. They've all pretty much been in agreement that Jay Sternberger has been pretty disappointing. And back to Matt's original point of he doesn't remember much of Bob Tonyan outside of the 60-yarder in Seattle. That was just an incredible throw by Aaron Rodgers, by the way. But tight ends in the National Football League take the longest to adjust to the league historically. And so if we go back to that, it's going to be that 3rd-year threshold is really what you're looking at. Some of these really elite guys come on in the 2nd year, but you look at Zach Ertz out of Philadelphia, he wasn't a star until his 2nd contract. So we might need a little bit of development out of Jace. And Big Bob, I think, is going into his 3rd year now. So this is really prime territory for him to go out there, make a name for himself, and really establish himself in this Matt LaFleur offense.
And it's been pretty tough sledding for Jay Sternberger, right? Big injury in his 1st year, missed most of the season. And then going into that 2nd year, which is supposed to be where, the full off season, everything, preseason, that whole developmental stage of that year 2 jump, he doesn't get that either. So, I don't know that I'm looking at Jay Sternberger in the same light that I would a typical expectation for a 2nd year jump. And specifically with the tight end, it could be year 3 or 4 before we really see him round into the player that the Packers projected him to be due to circumstances, largely outside of his control at this point. So, but it sounds like we're aligned. We've got 4 tight ends here. So now it gets really, really interesting. We're going to get into the offensive line, right? So, I think I don't even know what the number is. Let's just go with the locks and then talk about who's left. So obviously David Bakhtiari is going to be in. We've got Elkton Jenkins on the left guard. We've got Corey Linsley, or is he going to get traded last second with some of the flexibility?
No, they're keeping him. Way too shaky of a season to do that. And any other year, I think that'd be in play with the type of team the Packers run. But I think this year continuity is key.
I agree. I'm just mostly being hyperbolic there, but
for sure,
I think he's a lock.
It was in conversation though. Like let's not get it twisted. It was in conversation before the draft, and they went out and got Jake Hansen, who was a 4-year guy who could have easily stepped in and taken over. But to Schoberg's point, like it'd be pretty foolish to do that in this type of off season and this type of season where you're just going to need as much stability as possible throughout the entire team.
Well, and the Packers have done that in the past, right? They've moved on from centers like fairly quickly. It's one of those positions that they, seem to feel is one of those replaceable type of positions. But right. To Ryan's point, in any other year, that's probably a way bigger possibility than it actually is at this point. So we'll mark Corey Linsley down there. I'm going to say Lane Taylor is your starting right guard, regardless of who plays right tackle. What do you guys think about that?
I agree.
I'm not opposed to it. It's fine. Like I think Billy Turner or Lane Taylor would work for me, and I'm okay with it either way.
I'm gonna comment on that too. I don't know who it was. It was like Dustin Evely, Aaron Nagler, and a couple other guys. I think Ken Ingalls was in the conversation. I don't look at Lane Taylor as being so much of a trade candidate right before the season. With the cap stuff that's coming in the next 2 years, Billy Turner might be a trade candidate. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but out of the entire offensive line, he has the biggest contract for a guard. His contract sucks. Right. And so if you could unload that for an average, above average guard, tackle, swing type player, I think someone would bite, and I don't think the Packers would be totally against that.
I think Brian Gutekunst is always listening, as he says. They're in every conversation, I think, is the quote. So, again, to the earlier point about Corey Linsley, I'd be surprised if they do that, just given the situation of the season, the fact that, Ricky Wagner's injured. But there is Jared Valdir who tweeted out, he's strong and give me a call, Goody, out on Twitter. I think it was last week. So, you can always look at that. Hey, friend of the show, Alex Strouf, chiming in saying, shout out to Jeff Saturday. So that we all remember the Jeff Saturday experiment.
I was excited for that.
I was so excited for that. I thought that was going to be amazing. And then he was kind of just like, okay, but still made the Pro Bowl. So there you go.
Okay.
You even look at guys that won the Super Bowl for us. Scott Wells, he went on to play for the Rams and two other teams and was a starting center for a decade after the Packers.
Is center like the inside linebacker of the offensive line for the Packers? Like that's what it kind of seems like. And that's not a shot at Corey Linsley. I freaking love Corey Linsley. I think he's an amazing center. I think he's a top, 5-ish center in the NFL, but it just seems like the Packers MO, just like they like their certain kind of wide receivers, just like they don't pay inside linebackers or draft them with premium picks. They seem to find a mid to late round guy that can play center. They seem to always manage to do that. So I expect maybe Jake Hansen's that guy. We'll find out. Okay, so we've got David Bakhtiari, Elgton Jenkins, we've got Corey Linsley, we've got Lane Taylor, and who's winning the right guard? The right tackle battle? Is it? I'm going to put Billy Turner in there for now.
As well.
Just given that, Ricky Wagner is injured and they haven't signed Jared Valdir. So I'm gonna say he's a lock to make that right tackle spot. It sounds like Ryan agrees. What do you think, Matt?
I'll go with that. Like I said to start the episode, just talking about the week 1 matchup. To be honest, I thought Ricky Wagner would run away with this at right tackle. He clearly hasn't, and there's been more buzz that Billy Turner is going to kick out. And I just think we go back to the continuity he has already with the offensive line, and I think it just kind of makes sense to put him in there and then let Rick Wagner fill in where he needs to find a spot at some point.
No matter who wins it, I think they're both locks. So, put them both down for the roster.
Yeah, basically, like Billy Turner at right tackle makes Ricky Wagner your swing tackle at this point. And if something happens with his injury or just the play isn't there, or they want to move on that contract, they can do that. And especially with Jared Valdir, again, call him Goody. I think Goody should call him regardless of whether Ricky Wagner is healthy or not. I think that's such a valuable guy. We saw how he stepped in for Brian Bulaga in that playoff game, and when the most pressure was on and you need a guy to go in and fill in, I didn't really even notice a difference, to be perfectly honest with you. So I would love for them to make that move, but they haven't made it yet. So we'll put Ricky Wagner as the swing tackle, which means we need some versatility, depth on the inside. I'm going to say we probably need a couple, at least a backup guard. Like Lucas Patrick has got to be one of those guys, right? With his versatility to be able to play center and guard. I can't imagine that they're going to move on from him.
He's been getting smoked in one-on-ones, but I think he makes the roster just due to his versatility. And going with the last couple spots, I think they're locks as well, to be honest. They're rookies, and if you cut them, they're being picked up immediately. Jake Hansen and John Runyon. Runyon's going to be a starter in Green Bay for 4 or 5 years after this year.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's your future right guard, right? I mean, they've got Lane Taylor there now. I think he's probably slotted to move on and hit free agency, especially if he gets a starting opportunity here this year and balls out. All the power to him. Go get a max contract, Lane, and get us a nice comp pick. Thank you for your service, sir. Yeah, I think I don't disagree with that. Those are the guys I kind of had earmarked. I'd be willing to hear an argument for Stepniak or any of the other, kind of fringe undrafted free agents if you have any. But what do you think, Matt?
Let me just do this. So we got 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. Such a 8, 9. I mean, what? So you're saying you're going to keep John Runyon, which I agree, Jake Hansen, but why not Stepaniak, the other rookie?
He's been injured. I mean, it's as simple as that. If you're a rookie and you can't show your stuff, I do think he's on the practice squad because he hasn't shown anything in camp because he's been injured that another team would pick him up unless they really liked him throughout the draft process. So I do think he's a prime practice squad candidate and roster candidate for 2021.
Yeah, and I think another reason why I would say Hansen over Stepniak is just the fact that he plays center. And with Corey Linsley scheduled to be a free agent, I know they have flexibility there. Like Elton Jenkins can play center, but do we want him to play center? He might be an all-pro at left guard for the next 10 years. So I'm pretty cool with that. And if they can find some versatility there, they have options on the roster in Lucas Patrick and potentially Jake Hansen. So I think a lot of that will depend on their development over the year, what it looks like for 2021. But for now, I agree. 9 offensive linemen, David Bakhtiari, Jenkins, Corey Linsley, Lane Taylor, Billy Turner, Ricky Wagner, Lucas Patrick, John Runyon, and Jake Hansen. We good with that?
Let's run it. I'm good with that.
Boom. All right. Well, that's the offense. We've got our offense here, and let's tally up how many total. So that's 3, 6, 12, 16, 24. You guys got 24. That sounds about right. I got 24.
I didn't add the tight ends. You're right. 24.
Okay.
I was testing. I was making sure.
We need some tight ends, Matt.
5 eligibles, Matt. Come on. All right, let's go in reverse, starting in the trenches in the defense, defensive line. Defensive line, I think. Yeah, I mean, some injuries is kind of clouding this for me right now. I know like Hester and Keke were they not pulled out of practice? I think there were some injuries there. I mean, obviously
had a toe issue, didn't he? Like it's
right, yeah. So Kenny Clark, Kenny Clark, Dean Lowry, Tyler Lancaster. I think he's in. I think he stays. I just, especially with the injuries that we saw there, is he going to be a starter? No, I think you'll probably see more snaps with like Z or Rashawn Gary inside as opposed to Tyler Lancaster, but as a valuable piece that can be a rotational defensive lineman.
First down only.
Absolutely. So I'm going to put him in there as far as Lancaster is concerned. I think he did get a post-game, a presser post-practice too. So
I know.
Does that help him? I don't know. We'll see. So that's 3. I think
Kingsley Kiki's a lock. I'm just throwing that out there. He has been coming onto the scene.
That's what I've heard too. I think Aaron Nagler has been a big proponent of him, and it sounds like what I hear from like Andy Herman's updates and some of Rob Domofsky's tracker for one-on-one wins, stuff like that. That in team periods too, it looks like he's flashed a lot of that potential that we saw late last year. So yeah, I think he's a roster lock as well. What about Hester? Is he going to make this? Is injuries going to make this difficult? I mean, I think if he's healthy, he's in.
I think Montravius Adams is going to IR, and I think Jacob Hester has the best shot at making the roster at the rest of the defensive linemen. I think due to the amount of edge and outside linebackers we're going to be keeping, I think the defensive line takes a hit, and 4 is a possibility, as weird as that is to say.
That's what I had. That's exactly what I had too. I thought 4 as well.
Yeah, I mean, I had like 6 guys. I don't know that the Packers have ever gone that light on the D line. Just like the O line, I think you have to have depth there. That is one of those positions you can't just send guys out every single play and have them start the whole season. They'll get banged up. You need bodies there. I can't see them going any less than 5.
But when they're lining, like when you mentioned, like when they're lining up Z with either his hand in the dirt or a 3-point,
and Gary
and Gary, like they're going to be that third down lineman, whether or not they're in a 4 technique or a 2 technique or whatever the case may be. Like, it's not, they're not always playing the 3 down lineman at the traditional as you would think. So I don't, just because, to your point, I agree you need that depth, but just to add depth with someone like a Trayvon Hester. I mean, Lancaster, I was kind of on the fence about, but with the idea of moving Montravius Adams to IR, I think that's a really good idea. So my 4 then would be Kenny Clark, Dean Lowry, Kinsley Keke, who you can't cut, and then Tyler Lancaster. That's how I have it shaken out.
And also, just take the edge connotation away from Z and Gary, because they are what Tyler Ervin is to the offense. Take the position connotation away. You move them inside, you move them outside, and then there's guys that you can't let off this roster without them getting picked up by a different squad, a la Jonathan Garvin, 6th-round rookie out of Miami, a la Tim Williams, guys like that you can't cut. And guys like Trayvon Hester, you cut them, there's a good chance they're going to be a street free agent that you can pick right back up if you have anything go wrong in weeks 1, 2, or 3.
All right. Well, I think this is one of those things we're going to have to come back to, boys. Like, I mean, I'm hearing 4. I'm saying 6. We're saying maybe 5. When you say question, Schoberg, on Montravius Adams, you think he's going to IR. Maybe I missed something. What makes you think that? Is there something out there that makes it seem like it's a pretty significant injury? Or
I don't know if it's that significant, but if they see it for 3+ weeks, I think he's hitting IR just for the fact that you can keep him on IR, keep him on the roster. He doesn't get picked up by someone.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So we're either at, assuming Adams is an IR candidate, we're either at 4 or 5. We'll come back to the D line. Let's move to let's do edge defenders. I'm going to say Z, Preston, Gary, and who's that 4th guy? Who do you guys
I think there's 6.
I know there's probably more than 4, but I'm just saying, like, who is the Kyler Fackrell of this team this year?
Gary, Preston, Z, and then I think there's another guy that's positionless that can put his hand in the dirt or rush off the edge, and that's Tipa. I don't want to try his last name, but rookie undrafted free agent out of Utah State. The kid's been eaten alive in training camp. He's not been eaten alive, but he is eating our offensive line alive.
Yes.
And you let him go, he's gone. There's no chance you get him back. You keep him on the roster. Same with Jonathan Garvin. He's not quite as versatile as these other guys mentioned, but you keep him on the roster because he's shown something in camp, and he can show that he's rushed off the edge. And then I think you keep Tim Williams around, and there's 6 with essentially 3 hybrid defensive linemen that can step in on the defensive line if needed.
Exactly. That's exactly how I have it shaken out too. Like, the 3 are easy: Z, Preston, and Rashawn Gary. Tim Williams, I think I'm just a solid. I've been a fan of him for a while. I like his game. Tipe, whatever the heck his name is, he's been. I mean, that's one of the buzz names that I've been hearing from Packers Twitter and the guys covering him. And then Jonathan Garvin, man, that's a guy that I had high hopes for when they drafted him, watching his tape and just the young, he can bend around the edge, coming from Miami. He's just, and what he's done in training camp has only solidified my hypothesis that he's a decent edge rusher. And I think he's a guy that could work his way into a rotation. But I think it's a solid 6. And if they had to cut someone off, I don't know who it would be, but that's why it's tough. I'm gonna steal with 6.
If they had to cut one off, I'm sorry, Matt. I would cut Tim Williams out of that group, but
I think you're right.
I do think they stick with 6, but like I said, Ryan is very apprehensive about keeping 4 defensive linemen. But with this group that you have 6 edge rushers and you have essentially 6 or 7 defensive linemen as well.
Well, and I think it goes back to the earlier point. If you're using edge defenders as hybrid installers to take snaps on the defensive line, you have to have that depth at outside linebacker, right? You still need to spell those guys, and you need bodies to do it. So I had 6 as well, and I had the same 6. So again, the first 3, Tipa, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to learn how to pronounce that, though. We're all going to learn how to do it, because if he's making the roster, we got to know, right? So we'll work on that. I like Tim Williams. I know Zadarius Smith really likes Tim Williams, and I think he makes it as that 4th or 5th guy. And then I like Jonathan Garvin as well. I think he's really flashed in camp. And I mean, Rashawn Gary, can we just take a minute and stop and talk about how much he looks different this offseason? I cannot wait for all of the truthers that Rashawn Gary's a bust and, oh, what a wasted pick and all the crap that I've listened to about. Listen, if you were one of those guys, we still love you. But honestly, there's going to be receipts. I've got receipts. Rashawn Gary is going to have I think at least an 8-sack year. That's where I've got him. And if they really do use Z as much inside as I think, that could be more. He could literally get starting amount of snaps on that line, the way they rotate those 3 guys. So I just want to shout that out. It's Rashawn Gary's world, and we're all just going to be living in it pretty soon. So
you saw the smile on my face when we started talking about Rashawn Gary.
I know.
And I cannot wait for when he breaks out, hopefully stays injury-free, and all these, I'm sorry, maybe we don't love you, all these idiots who are judging people on their rookie season to come out of the woodwork and apologize to us, because Rashawn Gary is going to have a huge year. By all accounts, all the guys at practice every single day, he's had 2 or 3 sacks every single camp practice. Every one. He is the constant name that you see making plays on there, more so than Aaron Rodgers, who, is having a great camp, best camp in years, more so than Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, Jair Alexander, all these guys that we've come accustomed to hearing about camp after camp after camp. It's been Rashawn Gary's world, like you said, and we're just living in it. It's time to break out. 8 sacks is that threshold. I like that, Mark. I thought you were going to go 10. Thought that was maybe a little bit advantageous. But, that Rashawn Gary, he's going to get 50, 60, 70% of the snaps, and let's roll.
Beautiful. I love it. Okay, so we've got 6 edge rushers. Let's move to the inside linebackers. This is an interesting one. I think obviously Kirksey is a lock. Who that starting second spot is going to be, that's super interesting. With Oren Burks being interested, Schoberg's raising it.
You think.
It might be. It might be.
Go ahead, Schoberg.
Kamal Martin.
Yep. Thumper, dude. They've been talking about him the last week, just that he brings the thunder, and they didn't expect him to do that. And I think you match him up with Kirksey, and you're getting more physicality than you would think in that second spot. And most often, just I would assume it would have been more like a hybrid guy, like an Oren Burks, but Kamal Martin seeming like he's going to be that duo with Kirksey in the middle.
He is a hybrid, though. He can fly. True. And the thing is, been hearing all about this guy for 2-3 years living in Minnesota. Minnesota fans love this kid. Antoine Winfield is one for them. Kamal Martin is right behind him. He's been captain of that defense for 3 years, says something about his character. And this is just a case of injuries benefiting the Packers draft. He was going to go round 2, round 3, something of the sorts. He missed the whole back half of the season last year, and it really, really hurt his draft stock. I'm all aboard the Kamal Martin train. Kind of sounds like I'm talking about Rashawn Gary right now, but Kamal Martin, inside linebacker, is one of the easiest spots to transition to. I think he starts. I think Oren Burks. I think he's fighting for his roster life right now.
Well, he's injured again too.
Yeah, so I ultimately do think that he makes it, but I think he is a cut candidate. And man, didn't like that pick from the get-go in the 3rd round. Didn't know who Oren Burks was when he was picked, but I saw the athletic profile, got why they picked him. Just hasn't quite worked out for him. But yeah, Kamal Martin, choo-choo, giddy up, whatever you want to say. Let's get on board that D train.
Well, the interesting thing about that pick is Kamal Martin, when you look and compare him to Oren Burks, like what they do well and what they didn't do well in college were super, super similar. Where the big knock on Martin, and Aaron Nagler talked about this, where he just said he can't get off blocks. Like as soon as like he gets engaged, like he has a really hard time getting off blocks. It's the same problem Oren Burks had. Burks has yet to prove that he can change that, but he is a super valuable and one of their top performing special teamers. So if that wasn't the case, I'd agree, Schoberg, that he could be a cut candidate, but just if he's healthy and what he offers them on special teams and depth from the inside linebacker position, I almost think he's a lock, to be honest with you, because of that special teams presence. But I agree. I think you've got Kirksey there who can be that leader of the defense, and just let Kamal Martin go fly around and be a missile and find the football, because he can do it, and he's doing it against ones out there. I know, again, the ones, but all reports are indicating like some of the battles and the matchups that he's up against, we're not talking practice squad guys here, and he's winning those matchups. So
this is going to sound stupid, but this game in the pros with this roster, it might be easier for Kamal Martin, because Kamal Martin in Minnesota's defense, he was the guy. He was the guy offensive linemen targeted. They tried to get to the next level to specifically single him out. They didn't quite have defensive linemen. Obviously, they're not as good as Z and Preston and Kenny Clark, but they didn't have like college superstars on the defensive line either. So Kamal Martin was that guy that they were game planning for, game planning around, and he's going to be the last guy they're game planning for and game planning around. So when they go to the next level and he's in there with a Christian Kirksey, they're going to go get Christian Kirksey rather than Kamal Martin. Let him fly around, make a play or two, and we'll see what happens.
I like it. I like it. So we've got our starting 2. I think, do we agree that if healthy, Burks is that number 3 guy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So number 4, we've got a little bit of a battle here, right? There's Curtis Bolton, who last year was like the darling of camp until he got hurt. Mm-hmm. And then Ty Summers, Canada. Hey, we're not going with Schoberg. Let's not do this here. Okay? You know what? Listen. We're going to have a whole fucking live episode about that fucking game and that field. And you and I are we're going to get this out of our system, and we're going to process it. We're going to water under the bridge it. Okay. This is going to be a live event. All right. You into that? But until then, let's table that one.
I love it.
It's Ty Summers versus Curtis Bolton, in my opinion, and the tiebreaker going to Ty Summers because he's available and Curtis Bolton is not. And Ty Summers actually did show like a lot of talent and sideline to sideline ability last year. I mean, he had a lot of missed tackles, and I think that can be improved. That's a coaching, point that he'll improve upon. But he was really good on special teams. Like he was one of the better special teams players for the Packers. And I think just his availability, that versatility between depth on the defense versus special teams is going to put him as the number 4. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so my list started with 5, and I came into this episode with 54 or 55, so I knew I had to trim some there, and like that was the coin flip between Ty Summers and Curtis Bolton. But you might have just sold me on Ty Summers, just the fact that you know what you're going to kind of get from Ty, right? On a defense, he's going to be kind of what the Packers have at it inside backer. He's going to chase you down. He's not going to really play that great of man coverage, but I think his effort on special teams is going to get him a roster spot. If it ended up being Bolton, I'm okay with it, but I don't think you can keep both those guys. The guys, the inside backers last year that had a big preseason and training camp. It just doesn't make sense to me at this point. So I'll agree with you, Bowman. I'll go 4, and the fourth one being Ty Summers.
We're in agreement there. I have Ty Summers as well. Curtis Bolton, I think you have a better shot at getting on the practice squad just because he has no tape out there. He was injured all last season. Ty Summers wasn't. He was active a lot. So other teams may claim him if he gets cut. And he has the speed. He reminds me a lot of Blake Martinez, like you said, chasey down backer. Won't do a whole hell of a lot in coverage, but you don't need him to. He's a special teams. He's a special team stalwart. I'll call him that right now. He played really well on special teams last year. I think that's his path to the roster. So I think we keep 4. We're in agreement here. So, hey.
All right, let's stick in the middle of that defense then, moving on to the safety position. I think Savage and Amos are obviously locks there, but it does get a little bit interesting as far as how that will shake out. I think Raven Green is a lock. Like, Matt, what do you think? After that, it gets murky for me. I know we've got like Will Redmond, Vernon Scott, Henry Black. Like what are you thinking here?
This one's the secondary too. I mean, the whole defense is tough for me to really figure out, and especially in the safety, the back end position. Safety, it's obviously Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage. I think Raven Green's in there. Probably Will Redmond. And then I think Vernon Scott goes on practice squad. That's how I have it shaking out. I almost feel like when I'm reading this, there should be another guy. Like, I feel like they're missing another name I've heard about in the past years. But I think that's where you're going to see maybe the defense rely on more on the cornerback position and the safety position. And I think maybe that's just with Kamal Martin being there, him being able to fill that role of that hybrid guy. I hope Raven Green stays healthy because at that point, whether or not Vernon Scott makes the active roster, you're still down to your backup safety or safeties being Will Redmond, Vernon Scott, if and when Raven Green gets injured, which I hope doesn't happen, but history would tell you it's probably going to happen at least once throughout the year. So, but that's what I would have it at. Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage Jr., Raven Green, Will Redmond, and then Vernon Scott on PS.
Let's keep it 5. 2 starters. You keep 4 inside linebackers because Raven Green is both safety and linebacker, so he can fill both roles. Will Redmond, I do think, is a lock just because they've talked him up this offseason and how he's becoming a leader in the defense, which is almost unheard of for a guy with that little tenure and that little standing on the roster as far as experience and good gameplay to have that type of a leadership role. So that really says something about his character and how he's respected in the locker room. And then I do think they keep Vernon Scott, but I'm not opposed if we have to trim to put him on the practice squad.
Okay. I think you're onto something there, Ryan. Let's say 4, but keep Vernon Scott in our minds if we end up with some room there. He's one of those kind of, fringe guys that could either be a practice squad or fill a spot if we end up under. Hey, quickly, old friend of mine, Cincinnati Bengals fan, Kelly Newman, just giving me a shout out, Rybo here. So thanks for joining, Kelly, even though we know you're not a Packers fan. His son is an avid Packers fan. I brainwashed him at a young age. He probably doesn't care now, but, Bengals, Kel, get at us with your Bengals question.
Is that Kelly Newman or Jake Kumaro?
I don't know. Like, both him and his brother kind of look like Jake Kumaro.
It's him and Jake Kumaro.
Which one is which? Which is which? Like, Kelly, let us know. Are you related to Jake Kumaro? Because you are rocking some of that touchdown Jesus hair.
Whoa.
Just a quick, like we don't even just have Packers fans here, guys. We got Bengals fans jumping on live. That's when you know we've made it, right? Like we're reaching out to other fan bases. Like we're just growing here. Things are getting crazy. All right, last position before we get to the specialists, cornerback. This is the fun one. I mean, this might be my favorite position group on the defense, just from a pure swagger standpoint. I mean, you've got Jair Alexander, obviously a lock. Kevin King, obviously a lock. The other starting outside cornerback, Josh Jackson, obviously a lock. Shout out to myself for that one. I think Schoberg's not having it. Schoberg's not having it, but you can at least agree he's on the roster. Okay, we don't have to say he's the starting on the outside. Schoberg, are you cutting Josh Jackson at this point? No,
I am not.
All right. So Chandon Sullivan, I got to think is a lock for this this roster at this point. And he can actually play a little bit of safety too. So I think, Matt, you mentioned it before. Are we going to rely more on the cornerback position for that positional versatility to fill in at safety if need be? I think Chandon Sullivan's one of the guys that can do that. And Will Redmond, on the other hand, is one of those guys that can probably play corner in a pinch for you as well. I think he had to do some of that last year. So I like Sullivan here. And then it's a pretty cutthroat competition for some roster spots there. What do you think, Schoberg? Who are those kind of fringe guys that might or might not make it?
So the Packers might get mad at me for announcing my starters picks, depth chart and all that stuff, but we aren't credentialed media.
That's right.
So,
they don't have credentials. They can
if you want to get in a feud with us Packers, let's go. It might grow us even faster than we are now.
Give us credentials so that you can take them away from us.
Yes. We'll go Jair King starting on the outside. Jair can move inside if he needs to, but he is way too much of a shutdown corner to have him exclusively inside. And then the rising star in this secondary right now to accompany my boy Darnell Savage, Chandon Sullivan. He's going to be the starting nickelback. He can play the run really well. He can play the pass well as well. And shout out ESPN, but they had the top 25 rising stars under 25, and Chandon Sullivan was number 18. I did not think he was going to be on a list like that, but shout out Chandon, shout out his mom who follows me on Twitter now. But Chandon is going to start for this team, and he is going to play well. Shout out Dak Prescott, who really likes going against Chandon Sullivan. Got a couple picks down there in Dallas. But after that, like you said, it gets a little bit murky. But I'm going to go Kadar Holman and Josh Jackson getting a spot, obviously. And then that number 6 spot is Matt and I's darling. We have been preaching Stanford Samuels since he has been an undrafted signee after the draft. He's a little bit like, I don't want to say this because it's going to bring back nightmares for Packers fans, but he's Ladarius Gunter with skills. The only reason he did not get drafted is his 40 time. He ran like a 4.7. But you know what? That's fine. If you have the skills that Stanford Samuel showed in college that Ladarius Gunter didn't, he can make plays. He's got ball skills. So you just stick on him like glue. As long as it's not Randy Moss running a fly, you should be fine. But Stanford Samuels and Tipa, who we're not going to try right now with his last name, They are my undrafted darlings. They're here to stay. They're making the team. Let's go.
I mean, I like
Tipa's as far as Tipa's last name, we'll let Wayne Larrivee and Larry McCarron figure that one out. Just stumble over it for us. But that's exactly the 6 I have. I'm in on that. I mean, I could see them keeping 7, maybe with Will Sunderland or maybe Kabian Ento. But
Ento's going to be on IR as well.
There you go. So the comparison from Stanford Samuel's triple to Darius Gunter, that's solid. Saying that he's just more he's got more ball skills. I would say he's just a little bit more of an athlete, and he's flashed in training camp too. So it's nice to see that he's actually making some plays and against some of the better talent on the Packers roster, not the the first or second team, but the better talent on the roster.
So, I mean, it's an interesting comparison because when you said it, Schoberg, when people say, "Oh, Darius Gunter comp," their nose is wrinkled, but if Stanford Samuels turns out to be a Ladarius Gunter quality player, that's a good thing. Like Ladarius Gunter, everybody remembers him getting just absolutely destroyed against Julio Jones, but he had a decent year that year. He was put into a position to be a number 1 cornerback. Nobody in their right mind is putting him in that position if you have the right guys healthy and active on your team. So as a 3rd, 4th, 5th defensive back in the cornerback room, that's a pretty good guy to have. So listen, I stand by Ladarius Gunter, and if anybody's to blame, it's probably Dom Capers and or the Packers personnel for not getting him some help, because there's no way in hell he should have been covering Julio Jones. And again, that season, he had some really, really good games. He got himself a contract in Carolina after that. So, a veteran cornerback comparison, I'm all about it. So, I didn't have him on my list. I didn't have that comp in my notes, but I will align, and I'll say we're looking at 6 guys: Jair Alexander, Kevin King, Josh Jackson, Chandon Sullivan, Kadar Hallman, and Stanford Samuels. So that's 6. So let's just tally this up and see where we stand before we know.
So we have 24 on offense. Just go from there.
45. I think it works.
So I'm just going to mark the specialists. Do we really need to talk so much about the specialists, guys?
We have Hunter Bradley, J.K. Scott, Mason Crosby.
Okay, all right. Let's just get that out of the way.
2, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that with or without Vernon Scott?
So that would have been
if we go 5 on the D line, because we were like 4 or 5. Let's go 5 first. 5. Then we had 6 in the edge, so that's 11. Then we have 4 inside linebackers, 15. 4 safeties, that's 19. And then 6 defensive backs on the cornerback.
We're at 52.
So that's 25. So 25 plus 24 plus 3. Yeah, we're at 52. So we have a roster spot available. Oh my God, guys!
It never happens when I do this.
It doesn't happen to me either. I was thinking we were going to come in at like 55 and have some really hard decisions.
Did you say that's with or without Vernon?
That's without Vernon Scott. So we're sitting at 52 right now. 24 on the offense, 25 on the defense, and then 3 specialists. So we've got 1 roster spot available. We talked about Dexter Williams. We talked about Vernon Scott. There were some other candidates there. Curtis Bolton, maybe inside linebacker depth. Maybe it's another body on the defensive line if Adams doesn't go on IR. Who are we throwing it out to? Who are we making the happiest guy in the world as our last roster spot on cut down day?
I mean, it's easy for me. I'm just going to go back to if you can fit a fullback on the roster, you're going to put a fullback on the roster. It's John Lovett. So.
Oh, I like that. Schoberg, what do you think?
I'm going Vernon Scott.
You're going Vernon Scott. Okay. Well, I will make my decision based on those 2 options as the tiebreaker. I got to have me some more fullback. Man.
Oh wow!
I think there's enough positional versatility in the safety and the cornerback room to accommodate. So I'm going to say what Lovett brings to the offense, and maybe a true fullback is something that we'll need at some point. So why not? I mean, this is fun. Schoberg, are you protesting with like extreme prejudice, or how?
I'm not protesting with extreme prejudice, but I think that's Josiah DeGuara's role to really flourish into.
You're probably right.
But for the sake of hashtag more fullback, it's on brand.
I feel like we have to, if we have 1 roster spot here and we're going to let's give it to a guy that helps promote the brand of more fullback. Let's do it. All right. Love it. Exactly. You are in as the only true fullback on the roster, making our 53-man roster. So maybe what I'll do is I'll send a nice graphic out about what that final 53 is with this live stream. And I mean, how you guys feeling? Is this a roster that has a chance to win a Super Bowl, to go
100%? People are talking about is they didn't make moves to really take that roster to the next level. But there is no one on this defense over 27 years old. Christian Kirksey just turned 28 yesterday. But you're really counting on a lot of second and third year guys to take that jump that is very common with second and third year players. So you're not relying on Darnell Savage, Rashawn Gary, rookies in this defense. They can now come into their own, and they can make that second year jump. And you have Jair Alexander, who all indicators are pointing that he's going to be the next real deal in the secondary. He's going into his third year. You have all these super young players that a lot of them were in their first year in the system last year, with Mike Pettin not being in his first year, but Zadarius, Preston, a lot of these guys. Kenny Clark is now the longest tenured Packer defensive player, and he is 24 years old.
That's effing crazy, honestly. Like the fact that he's 24 and hasn't even hit his prime, and we've got him locked up for that prime, like just gives me the giggles. But
and he's our longest tenured defensive player. Like that is crazy. So everyone's going to come into their own. It's a lot of the same story on the offense too. This wide receiver position, Alan Lazard. Hopefully he can take that next step, relieve some of that pain from Devontae Adams, and hopefully a third guy really emerges between Equinemius St. Brown and Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Matt, any final thoughts for you? Reggie Bagleton. Oh, we didn't come back to Reggie Bagleton as a potential for that. I can't believe you took Lovett over Bagleton. Kieran's going to have some words for you, Matt, after that. But
okay. Well, at some point, maybe he'll get a chance. I
think so. I think much like Alan Lazard, that Bagleton could have a similar thing, going down to the practice squad, and then injuries happen, man. And if that does, I think he's like that first man up for the guys that go down to the practice squad. Either him or Darius Shepard. I know Shepard's had a pretty nice camp too, but don't Schoberg. Your emotions are on your sleeve all the time. Like he did hurt me a little bit in that.
No, he's a Bison. I'm from South Dakota. We don't affiliate with Bison.
Long grudges, man. Once they wear that green and gold, we gotta let it go, right? Matt, any final thoughts here aside from Bagleton, Lovett?
I'm just really excited for this defense, to be honest, and I think there's so much optimism throughout every position group, and there's probably every one of those position groups that has like a player that could make or break that defense from being a top 5, top 10, or a top 20 defense, and that's like a Rashawn Gary, that's the Kamal Martin, and that would be probably
Josh Jackson.
I'm probably going to go with Josh Jackson, to be honest, like because Chandon Sullivan might if he gets pushed in that safety position, but for all intents and purposes, I'm super stoked for the defense. I think it's a really solid group of dudes, and they're going to get opportunities because they don't have to be the guy; they just have to be a guy. Offensively, I'm excited to see the transition in year 2 from leaving the Mike McCarthy era. I still think there's some residual effects from that, but I think it's a full, almost to a full revamp of where Matt LaFleur, Nathaniel Hackett would like it to be. But I am concerned for the receiver position, but I'm most excited to see what the tight ends, who emerges as the number one, and really like just what their role is in this offense.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's that next step for the offense that I'm probably most excited about. I think you guys hit it. The defense is probably going to be better this year, and it was pretty good last year. So if there is any kind of consistency in the run defense, and we're in more of those long passing down situations, I think that's where the Packers defense is going to thrive and take that next step from being, kind of a middle of the road defense overall and really good at pass rush, but kind of weak in the run game. Like if they can get any kind of consistency there, then I think that's what's going to happen to take the next step. And I truly do believe that Christian Kirksey and Kamal Martin being those linebackers, and if they're on the field and in less dime, that might be enough to get that improvement in that area. So sure. I agree. I expect that next step for the defense. But that offense, like everybody says we didn't add any weapons, but like I totally disagree. I think Josiah DeGuara is a weapon in this offense with the 5 eligible thought process. I think A.J. Dillon, I mean, I'm not going to go any more into it, but like I freaking was so excited about the A.J. Dillon pick right from the get-go, and nothing's happened to change my mind. He hasn't had like a huge camp. I don't expect him to be getting a ton of snaps coming out of the gate, but by mid-season, late season, I think that becomes a really nice balance between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And I think he's a weapon in the pass game, in the run game. I think those 2 pieces alone, never mind getting Equanimous St. Brown back in the fold. Never mind another year in the system for Jay Sternberger and some of those other players that were here last year. Another year of Tyler Irvin with an offseason, like the freaking weapon that Tyler Irvin is. Like, come on, man. Like he was a gadget player, mostly there for special teams, but it did not take Matt LaFleur long to go, holy shit, like this guy, we can use this guy, right? So I think all of those things combined, the Packers have the weapons that they need to win football games and score a lot of points. And I couldn't be more excited. I couldn't be more excited for this team and what Packers Worldwide is going to bring this season. It's going to be dope. We've got some funny ideas. We've got some serious ideas. We hope you guys will follow along. Remember to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. For Matt Freilich, for Ryan Schoberg, I'm Ryan Bowman. Packers Worldwide Live. We're out.
Now here's the run up, swing of the right leg, and we're underway.
Here we go.
You know what time the game starts? All right, here we go, fellas. Let's have a little fun today. Is anybody else tired, or is it just me? I got some advice for y'all. Take 2 weeks off, then quit.
From the goal line to 5 to 10 to 15. Through a hole to the 20, to the 30, outside to the 40. He may be gone. Midfield to the 40, the 30, the 25, 20, the 10, 5. Touchdown for Desmond Howard.